Hello friends, this is Mike Williams, and tonight's guitar video is a tutorial on how to install a Hipshot Baby Grand on your Les Paul style guitar. The Hipshot Baby Grand is a replacement for the typical wraparound bridges found on guitars like the Gibson Melody Maker. The guitar I worked on for this tutorial is one of my Gibson Baldwins, where the wraparound bridge I had originally installed on the guitar had too high a profile, and this limited my ability to lower the action to where I like to have it set. I was already familiar with the Hipshot Baby Grand since I had installed one on my own Melody Maker and decided to take the plunge and buy another for this guitar. These bridges are well made, but they are not cheap. The Baby Grand is $110 on the Hipshot website and approximately $80 on Amazon. So when I found a seller on eBay letting them go for $68, I jumped on it. The end result, as you will see, did not disappoint. The Hipshot, due to its low-profile design, allowed me to get the string action to exactly where I needed it to be. I will have the comments section open for this video, but I will be approving comments to ensure that we keep the dialogue productive. So I hope you enjoy the clip, and thanks for watching. Hey friends, it's Mike, and today's video is going to be quick, I hope. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out this wraparound bridge for a bridge like this. This is a Hipshot bridge. It is it's like a wraparound, except you have like the tail pieces back here. And this is called the Baby Grand, the Hipshot Baby Grand style one-piece bridge tailpiece. And the reason why I'm going to put the Hipshot on this guitar is because in my last video I mentioned at the end that I got the intonation set perfectly. The fact that it has the individual saddles is a tremendous help to get the entire guitar in tune and set the intonation. But the problem is that because of the, let me just pull this chair out here for a second. I don't know if you're going to be able to really see this, but the bridge from a height perspective is a tad too high. So what happens is the action on the guitar down at the 12th fret right here, well, it's higher than I like it. So I like it to be about 2.5, 30 seconds here, and at the high E around 2 or so. Maybe a little higher on the high E if you play a lot of lead guitar. But the problem is this is pushing about 3.5, and it's up over a little over 3 on the high E, and so the action is just a little too high. And this is as low as this particular bridge goes. So what I'm going to do is swap this out for this. And that's going to be today's video. Now this is my Gibson Melody Maker. It is a real Melody Maker. And when I bought this guitar used, it had a bridge like this on it. And I put this Hipshot on, and it's tremendous. Now the Hipshot, what's good about it is a very low profile bridge. See if you can see that. And because it's a low profile bridge, it allows you to be able to set the string height over the 12th fret, the action, and allows you to be able to set the intonation, because like this bridge here, where you can move the bridge back and forth, you can see you can do the same thing here. Now what I had to do with this Hipshot bridge is, you see that washer that's there? That did not come with the bridge. And so what I found was that without this washer, what would happen is when I tightened the strings up and tuned them, the back of the Hipshot would lift up a little bit because of the tension of the strings pulling on it. The same thing, by the way, happened on this bridge. And what I had to do is I had to put some fiber washers underneath the bolt here, going into the anchor, to keep the bridge from moving forward or tilting forward. So both bridges have that issue. But once I put the washers on the Hipshot, that went away, and the back of the bridge just stays straight as an arrow and it's flush. So that's good. And so today's video is going to be me swapping this out for that. And even though when I put this guitar together, I said I wanted to keep the parts real cheap and not get too carried away, well, considering all the work I put into it, this is the guitar where I swapped out the fretboard, I swapped out the tuners, the pickups, the trim, and all that stuff. And it was cheap parts coming out of China. But the guitar really came out nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go the extra mile and put the Hipshot on. Now these Hipshot bridges, the reason why I resisted putting it on this guitar and my other Gibson Baldwins is because they're expensive. If you go to Amazon, this will cost you between $85 and $90, whereas this bridge over AliExpress cost about, I don't know, $7 or $8. I forgot what the exact price was, and there's no shipping. But all in all, for a $7 to $8 bridge, this works very well, especially if you're able to get your neck to sit up higher. So you can do that by shimming the back, or you can shim it by putting some wood in there, or you can add some washers or spacers. That'll do the trick. The only problem is when you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to have a gap here, okay? If you use the shimming method with washers or spacers. And some people don't want that gap. They want it to be flush. I'm one of those people. I'd like it to be flush. So if the neck sat higher, this would be perfect, but because it doesn't, I'm going to have to go with a lower profile. And now, as I mentioned, they're not cheap. So if you go to Amazon, $85 to $90 is what I saw them for there. In fact, I think I paid that for this before I found a guy on eBay that was selling them brand new for $68. So I saved about 20 bucks to get this one. And I'll be putting another one on my other Gibson Baldwin, which I actually rebranded. I put my own logo on the headstock. Okay, so I'll stop babbling now. I just wanted to give you some background as to what I'm doing here. We're going to be putting this bridge on this guitar and taking this one off. Okay, so I'll be back. Okay, so I unpacked the Hipshot Grand from its box, and this is what it looks like. And you can see that it's a very low profile, which is nice. It comes with the anchors, and you'll see that the anchors are black. They are metal, so this is good because with these guitars that are a one-piece or a wraparound tailpiece and bridge, the ground wire going to the pickups is going to touch up against one of these to ensure that the guitar stays grounded, and then you have the Allen wrenches, which are used to insert here to be able to adjust the screw that's inside so that you can move the, move it here, so that you can move the bridge. You can adjust it like so to get the intonation set. And I'll show you how to do this. And what I do is I always set the high E and the low E intonation first, and then I do the other four strings. Okay, so but you have to get the high E and the low E set initially, and then everything else should follow in order. Okay, now if you have a Chinese guitar or foreign guitar, what's going to happen is you have metric threads in here, and so this, when I unscrew the anchor piece, is not going to screw in because this has American threads. So what I have to do is I have to pull these out. So I'm going to do that now, and I've showed you this in some of my other videos, but I'll do it again so that you can see at least my method on how to get those these anchors out of the guitar. Okay, so I'll be right back. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to get this anchor out. And so the best approach that I have found is to take a bolt, a small one, and you may have to clip the top of it, which I did with some bolt cutters, and take the head of the bolt and drop it into the hole, like so. Okay? Now, take the original bolt that was holding down the bridge, and you're going to see that it's only going to go so far. When you tighten it, that's because the bolt is in the way. Now, as you tighten it some more, as long as this anchor is not glued in, it should start to come out. So let's take a look and see. Usually they're not glued in, but I had situations, one in particular, where it was. And what I had to wind up doing was drilling the post anchor out. Now this one's coming out, so this is great. All right, so we're in good shape here. We're in very good shape. Okay. In fact, on this one, I think I had put, I did some duct tape around the base in order to keep it from moving around on me. Okay, so let me get that out. I won't waste your time on the video doing that. I'll just have to pull it out with a pair of pliers, and then we'll do the other anchor as well. Okay, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I got this one out, and now we're going to work on the other post anchor, and I already dropped a small bolt in, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to screw this in, like so, and then take a screwdriver and see if we can pull this up. I'll get my hand out of the way so you can see, and you can see it's coming up. Yeah, and I did put some duct tape on these anchors. I'm trying to remember now. I recall they were swimming around a little bit on me because the holes were just a tad too big. So I wanted to tighten it up so that the posts on the bridge wouldn't move around on me. Just got to keep playing with this. Pull it out. Be gentle. Here we go. And don't forget to pull the little bolt out. Here you go. And that's it. So now we're ready to put the other anchors in. And I'm sure it's going to swim around. You see it does. Big time. In fact, the holes don't even appear to be deep enough, so I'm going to have to drill the holes deeper so that I can get this anchor in properly. Interesting how this works. Okay, so let me go get the drill and I'll be right back. I want to show you guys one thing. You can see in the hole there, this is, get you oriented on the guitar, okay? You can see the copper wire. That copper wire is the ground that's running from there into the pots. And this is what grounds the guitar, so you don't get a lot of buzzing, all right? So you want to make sure that you're not somehow blocking that wire or shielding it. When I had the tape on, I had made sure that I had the actual metal of the anchor exposed to the copper wiring, okay? All right, so let's take a look at what I've got here. So I'm using this bit to put into the guitar, and I'm just going to drill down just a little bit and to ensure that I can get this anchor to fit properly so it doesn't stick up out of the guitar, because that will defeat the whole purpose of having a low profile Hipshot bridge tailpiece on the guitar. So let me go get my drill now and get that hole drilled a little bit, and we'll be all set to continue on with the installation. One other pointer before I get started. It's very important that you use a bit like this where you don't have the spaded front like these, okay? Because if you use a drill bit like this, this is called a spade bit set. What's going to happen is you're going to get way too close to the back of the guitar, and if you go too far, you're going to punch a hole through it, and you don't want that to happen for obvious reasons. So use a does not have a spaded tip, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark off this bit with a piece of tape to make sure that I only go so deep, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so let me put the tape on. I'll measure it with the anchor to know how deep to go, and then we'll drill the holes. So let me show you what I did here. So this is the anchor. This is what has to go inside the guitar, drop inside the hole. So what I did was I measured it from the tip right here and right here, and then I marked it with blue tape. Okay? So when I drill, the drill should only go this deep. And as soon as I see it go this deep and it's flush with the body, take the drill out, stop drilling. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So let me do that now, and I'll be right back. All right, so let's take this drill. You can see we only have a little ways to go. That's it. Now we want to do the same with this hole. We want to get it at the same depth, but you can see what I did here. I pulled the ground wire out, okay? Because I have to try to avoid getting that caught up in the drill, because if I do, I'm going to potentially pull out the ground. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to pull it very taut. And I'm going to do the best I can to keep the drill away from that wire, and I have enough room to do that. So Okay, I think that worked. It did indeed work. Okay, so I didn't touch the ground wire. And if I drop this in now, looks like it's got to go just a little deeper. All right. I was conservative with the tape around the drill bit. I did that on purpose to make sure that I didn't go too deep. So I have to go a little deeper now. And let me do that, and I won't take you through that. You can see what I'm doing here. And as soon as I get those holes at the proper depth, then we'll continue on with the work. Okay, so I have the holes now at the proper depth. You can see here's the base of the post going in. The same on this end here. Now what I may do, if I think about it, maybe or maybe not, I might put a small washer down here, basically as a trim piece. Maybe I don't have to do that, so I'll take a look. But what I do have to do, you can see how these move around, shift around. So I'm going to, with some super glue, I'm going to glue in a couple of toothpicks on this side of the hole. Also on this side of the hole, the front end, not the back, the front. And the reason why I wanted the front, number one, because I don't want the bridge leaning forward. Secondly, because here's the ground wire, remember? And that ground wire has to touch the metal post going in order to ground the guitar properly. So let me go get some toothpicks, and I'm going to glue them in. I'm going to wait about 15-20 minutes to make sure that they are hardened and that the toothpicks won't shift around on me. Contrary to popular opinion, super glue does not dry and cure like within a second or two. It takes a couple of minutes or so for it to really harden and make sure that whatever you glue together stays in place. So let me do that now. Get the toothpicks, get the super glue, and then we'll tighten up those holes. Here's the super glue, and here's the toothpick. And what I'm going to do is get the super glue on that toothpick. Make sure when you put it on, I'm doing this off camera because you don't want to be spilling any super glue onto the guitar, because that could definitely be a problem. Put the super glue on and then place it in the hole like so. Just lean it up. I'll force a little something there in a minute to keep it in place, but right now that'll work. And what I'm going to do is put another toothpick in there and then place that in there. Just take a small screwdriver, push it in place. Now, we just want this to be in some kind of reasonable position so that when we put the anchor in, it's going to be nice and tight. Now, the beauty with the toothpicks is that the wood is very soft. So we'll be able to push down the anchor, and the wood will have some give, but it will keep the anchor very tight. Okay, so we're just going to leave that as it is for now. I'm going to clip the tops with a fret puller. We'll do that in a minute. Let me just get the other hole set. Okay. We'll put another one in. Again, I'm putting the fat side of the toothpick down, and all I'm doing is putting the glue along one side of the toothpick. That's all I'm doing. Okay. Let me just move over a little bit and just make sure that I've got this flush. take a little bit of the excess off there. Spilling over onto the finish of the guitar. Not that that's a big deal, it's going to be covered. But you still don't want to have super glue on the outside of your guitar. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to give it about 10 minutes or so. Then I'm going to clip those toothpicks, and then we're going to push the new anchors into the guitar. Okay, so I'll be back in 10 minutes. About 10 minutes after putting the glue on the toothpicks. And really what you want to do is, let me see if I can do this. I'm going to film with one hand. Is you want to take these clippers, these are fret pullers, and you want to clip them. The beauty with the fret pullers is because of the way they're designed, they will clip flush against the body. See? Okay, so I'll be right back, and we'll start putting the new anchors in. Okay, so you can see that the anchors are, for the posts, are sitting up. And so what I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to have to take a mallet. This is a mallet for a guitar. And I'm going to have to tap them in. All right, and like I said before, what's going to happen is that the toothpicks, which are here at the front of these anchors, are going to, because it's soft wood, it's going to flex, and these anchors will be able to sit into the pockets correctly. Okay, so when you do this, just pick up your guitar a little bit like I'm doing right here, and just tap it. That's all you have to do. That's it. Okay. All right. So now, again, with this one, I took the copper wire that is the ground to the pickups and the pots, and I bent that wire down so it's facing down in the hole, so that when I bang this in, the copper wire will stay flush and touch the metal anchor, so that we have the proper ground going. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, I have these neoprene washers, and they're rubberized washers, and I'm going to put them underneath the posts in order to get some trim, because you could see around the hole here, it's a little unsightly. It's not as tightened up as it should be, and that's because the hole is, when they put the guitar together, it was too big for the anchors. So to kind of clean that up a little bit, I put these neoprene washers in. I've had to do this with other guitars, and by doing so, it helps to trim up the guitar. There you go. Okay. Has a nicer appeal to it. And the next thing we're going to do is we put place the actual Baby Grand Hipshot on the guitar, and it comes with these little washers, so we're just going to drop them in. Okay, and so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some plain old everyday washers and just drop it on top of the washers that come with the Hipshot, and then take the bolts that come with it and just tighten it by hand. And do not tighten completely down yet, because we'll do that when we finalize the actual setting of the intonation and the positioning of the bridge itself. Okay, so that's that piece of it. And the reason, again, why I have these washers on here, I added them, is because if I don't have them on, what will happen is when the strings tighten, when I tune the guitar up, the back of the Hipshot, which we'll call this the tailpiece, it will lift up slightly. That's because of the tension of the strings, and when that happens, it, of course, the bridge goes from sitting like this to sitting like this, and then the slots are angled on the saddles. So when I did this, and I also did it on the Gibson Melody Maker, it made a world of difference. The whole piece just stayed put. No up, no down, just stayed flat, flush with the guitar. And that's the way you want it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, let me get myself cleaned up a little bit here as far as my workspace. And get ready to start doing the intonation. And I'll show you how to do that, okay? Be back. Okay, so I have the low E here and the high E on the guitar. And you can see that there's no clearance. This is good. This means that I'm going to be able to adjust the action on the guitar to the 2.5, 30 seconds on the low E and roughly the 2 on the high E, where I wasn't able to do that before with the old bridge because the old bridge, the profile was too high. But you can see with this Hipshot, the profile is nice and low. So now the way you raise the bridge is by taking one of the 2 Allen wrenches that they give you, and the big Allen wrench goes in here, and you turn it until you get the bridge at the proper height. So the proper height, the way you would measure that, and I'm sorry for this camera bouncing up and down, it's my phone, is I'm going to raise it until I get 2.5, 30 seconds here. And I'm going to do the same thing on the high E with the Allen wrench, putting it in this slot here, until I get 2:30 seconds here. And once I do that, then what I'll do is I will tune the strings up. And then what I need to do is to move the Hipshot either backward or forward. That's why you have a U right here, this little cutout. And this allows you to move it back or forward without yet having to fuss with the saddles. Okay, think of this as fine tuning, but the initial tuning has to be the positioning of the bridge itself. And the way you do that is you move the Hipshot, like I said, backward or forward. Okay, so I'm going to raise the bridge now to get the proper clearance I was talking about at the 12th fret, which is 2.5, 30 seconds here and 2:30 seconds. And what I'm talking about, for those that are not familiar with what I'm saying with these numbers, what I'm saying is 2.5, 30 seconds is the gap between the top of the 12th fret and the bottom of the string, in this case the low E. And 2:30 seconds, which is 1/16 of an inch, is the same thing. It's 1/16 of an inch or 1/16 of a gap between the top of the 12th fret and the bottom of the high E string. So let me do that now. I won't film that. I'll just do it real quick, and then we'll come back, and then we'll start working on the intonation. Okay, so this is really coming out nicely. I was able to raise the bridge by using the Allen key, which is here somewhere, right here. Okay, so when I turn the Allen key, when I turn it counterclockwise, it raises the bridge. So I raised the bridge on both sides, on the high E and the low E, to a point where I was able to get the action at the 12th fret right here, the low E at a little over 2:30 seconds, around 2.5, 30 seconds, and the high E at 2:30 seconds, which again is 1/16 of an inch. And I like to have my action a little higher because I do play lead guitar, and if your action is set too low, it's actually counterproductive to playing lead. What will happen is when you go to do bends, sometimes your fingers will slip, especially if you have calluses on the end of your fingers, which you should if you're playing guitar a lot, especially if you're playing lead guitar, and rhythm for that matter, playing chords. So with the height a little higher, you're actually making it more conducive to playing lead guitar. I read that Stevie Ray Vaughan actually had his action set very high for that very reason, so that he can get in under his strings and do his bends. Okay. Now, as luck would have it, when let me just turn the tuner back on here. Okay, so the high E is tuned to E. Let me just make sure I get it right on the money here. Okay, that's good. And then when I pluck down, hold down the 12th fret, this is how you test the intonation, and pluck. It's pretty much there. Yeah, it's there. So what that means is I do not have to adjust this side of the Hipshot. Remember I was talking to you about forward or backward? It's okay exactly where it is. Now, that's not the case with the low E, and it very rarely ever is. So when I do the low E, you tune it up. That rattling you hear is not the guitar, but stuff on the table. Okay. And then when I pluck down, it's a little sharp. Now, when your intonation is a little sharp, what that means is that the saddles have to be moved back. Okay, so when you move saddles back, you are flattening the strings. When you move saddles forward, you are sharpening the strings. So think of it this way. Short meaning the distance between this saddle here, the slot in the saddle, and the slot on the nut is shorter than it was. That will sharpen the note. If you move the saddles back, right here, then what's going to happen is you're going to make the string longer and you're going to flatten the note. So now, before we start playing with the saddles, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this other Allen key, which is the smaller, skinnier key, and I'm going to insert it in the slot back here. Okay? And I'm going to turn, and as I turn, there's a screw in here, and that's going to push up against the post. And by doing so, what's going to happen is it's going to take the bridge and it's going to move it back. So I'm going to flatten the string, not by playing with the saddle yet, but by moving the actual bridge back a little. And then if I have to do some fine tuning with the saddles, once I get it in the ballpark, and usually it's more than a ballpark, usually you can get it right spot on, then you can start playing with the saddles to fine tune the intonation on the guitar. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to pluck the string. Okay, so the low E is tuned. And right now, as I pluck the octave, it is too sharp. So let's move the bridge, the low E portion of the bridge. Let's move it back a little bit. I don't know if you can see the bridge actually moving back. That's what's happening. So when you do that, you're going to have to retune the open E. Okay, so now let's pluck it. Almost there. Almost there. So this has got to go back more. Now, this is not unusual because if you look at your guitar, if you have a Les Paul guitar, take a look at how the bridge is positioned. It's not straight across. The low E side of that bridge is shifted back toward the back of the guitar more than the high E. So let me tune this again. Okay, so the open E is tuned, and the low E at the octave is just about there. So let me try it again. Okay, just a little bit more. I have to move it back just a little bit more. Oop, wrong key. Tune the open E again. Remember, every time you do this, tune the open string. Don't go right to the octave. Again, the buzzing you hear is stuff on the table. It's not the guitar. Okay. Right on the money. Right on the money right now. Okay, so what that means is now I can tighten these bolts down and keep the bridge in place. And then I'll put the rest of the strings in. Now, because the high E and the low E are positioned correctly, in other words, the bridge is angled correctly, then the rest of the strings will fall into place. That does not mean, however, that you won't have to play with the saddles a little bit, but just a little bit. It shouldn't be drastic, changes in the saddles. That might happen sometimes on cheaper guitars where, you do have to play with the saddles a lot. But typically, when you have a nice bridge like this, that's not the case. All right, we should be in good shape. So let me tighten down the hatches here and get the bridge locked in place, and then I'll put the rest of the strings on and I'll intonate, and hopefully we're going to be in good shape. Okay, be back. Okay, so we're all done with the intonation and getting the guitar all tuned up, which means that the bridge saddle combination is positioned correctly. It did take a little bit of work. I initially got the low E and the high E intonated correctly, and then typically what happens is the other four strings fall into place, but that didn't exactly happen. So what I had to do was I had to move the bridge back a little bit, just a little bit more, and I also had to move the high E end of the bridge back a little bit. Now the other thing I had to do, and you have to do this on some bridges, so just to make you aware, you can see here the high E saddle, and let's see if I can get a good shot of it. But you can see there's a flat side. Here's the flat side here, and then it slopes down, and that's the back of the saddle. Now what I had to do, aside from the E and the B, and you can see how the saddles are positioned, this is how they came with the bridge stock, with the sloped side of the saddle pointing to the back of the guitar and the flat side pointing toward the front of the guitar, toward the pickup. So what I had to do for the E, A, D, and G string is I had to take those saddles and I had to flip them around so that the flat side of the saddle is facing toward the back of the guitar, and the angled or sloped side of the saddle is now facing toward the pickup. The reverse of how the saddles came when I opened up the box to take the Hipshot out. Now, why did I have to do that? I had to do that because I had run out of room to intonate. In other words, if the saddle, if I didn't flip it around, then the back of the saddle, which would have been here, right, I'm picking on the A string now as an example, would have been right here, the very back of the bridge. And I had no more room to intonate, and it was still off by a little bit. So by flipping the saddles around like I did, you give yourself more room. And so I got that extra room, and now it is intonated perfectly. So a little bit of work there, and I hope that made sense. Now, I can tell you that flipping the saddles on this Hipshot wasn't difficult at all because it is a spring-loaded system, so which means you turn the screw until the screw comes out, the spring will come out, then you can just flip the saddle around, put the spring back in, press it in, and then put the screw back in and screw it in. That's all you have to do. Now, for some of the bridges, like the bridges that ship out of China, they have what they call an E-clamp. And the E-clamp is a little C-shaped clamp, and it has a little middle part in the middle of the C, which makes it an E. And it sits right at the front of the screw, inside the slot here, where you would see the screw. And you'd have to pull that E-clamp out in order to swap the saddles. Now that could be a little tricky sometimes because if you damage that E-clamp, then your saddle's going to kind of slop around on you a little bit. So you have to be very careful. But you can do it, and I've done it plenty of times. And if you take your time, it's not an issue. The bridges where it's a problem flipping the saddles is a Goto bridge. I still haven't figured out how to do it. So I have a guitar upstairs that I have to take a look at. I can't get the low E string intonated exactly, and the saddle is all the way to the back of the bridge. And I want to flip the saddle around like I did here, but I can't figure out how to do that, to get the bolt out. But I'll work with it tomorrow and see if I can figure it out. If not, I'll have to go with a different bridge, maybe a Chinese bridge. Anyway, so I hope this video was helpful to you. I can tell you that it's a very good looking bridge and it looks nice on the guitar. And it's a well-made bridge. It's very well made. No problems with it. The problems I did have with it really didn't have anything to do with the bridge. It had to do with the fact that this is an inexpensive guitar. And a lot of these inexpensive guitars, especially this one, which was made about 10 years ago, I don't think there was a lot of science and math calculations going into the distance between the bridge and the nut on the guitar. And so a lot of people maybe don't know this, but it has to be a certain amount of distance in order for the guitar to intonate properly. So with a lot of these inexpensive guitars, they pop the bridges and the tailpieces in, and maybe, close enough is good enough. And so that's why when you go to do work like this, it winds up being a lot more work than you would expect. As an example, when I put this Hipshot bridge, the same exact bridge, on my Gibson Melody Maker, I did not have to go through all this. I didn't have to flip saddles or any of that good stuff. I basically intonated the low E, the high E, and the 4 other strings just fell in place and I was done. But on this guitar, it was a bit more of a hassle. Not a big deal, but it was time consuming, and to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting to do this much work to get this bridge on the guitar. But it looks really nice, and again, I put the washers on there. I highly recommend that, because when you do that, then the bridge sits nice and straight across. It doesn't get pulled down due to the tension of the strings. Okay, and the beautiful part about this bridge is because it is low profile, I was able to get the action on the strings down to exactly where I like to play. So I'm really happy with that. Now again, the other bridge I had on here, not a bad bridge for $6, $7, $8. I forgot how much it cost out of China, off of AliExpress. It's just that it's too high a profile, and if you have a neck that sits a little lower to the body, then it could be problematic. If your neck sits up a little higher, then it probably won't be a problem, and you'll be able to use the bridge, set the action on the guitar, and intonate without a problem. But on this guitar, it wasn't working. Okay, so anyway, this was the guitar that I think, how much was this guitar? I think this was the $50 guitar that I got. And it was a mess when I received it. It was dirty, dingy, grungy, and I put the new fretboard on, and I had to repaint the back of the neck. And this is the first time that I did this, using enamel and with clear coating, and it came out very nice. And you can see it's a pretty good match, especially when you look at the neck here, and then take a look at the back of the guitar where it doesn't have the grain. So it came out nice. Okay, guys, that's it. I hope that this video is helpful. I hope it wasn't too choppy. If it was, or if you have any questions, please feel free to comment. Okay? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.